The story begins with Mirai giving up everything because he is unhappy. However, before this he is saved by an angel named Nasa who has come to make him a happy person. Mirai lost his family as a child and was adopted by his cruel uncles and has no friends or hope for the future. As a way to make him happy, Nasa grants him angel tools, a wing to give him freedom and red arrows capable of making someone fall in love to give him love. They came in the form of halos and she explains that only humans accompanied by angels could see. Then he sprouts his wings and takes off crying with emotion as he experiences the freedom he has always dreamed of. Nasa goes to him and explains that with the powers he could do whatever he wanted, including controlling people's hearts. He says that this is demon stuff to say and she explains that demons only exist in people's hearts, like his uncles who eliminated his family pretending it was an accident. This causes him to go into shock and she tells him that if he wanted he could use the arrow to check for himself. And guys, help us grow our channel by hitting the like button and subscribing to our channel. We have a lot more exciting content coming up that you don't want to miss. So give it a thumbs up so we can beat the goal of 153 likes on this video. And now let's go. Mirai goes to his house where his aunt was. As soon as she sees him she begins to mistreat him. Realizing that there was no other way to make her talk, he hits her with the arrow, making her fall in love with him and confess that his uncle planned the elimination of his parents and his little brother to get the family inheritance. Just then his uncle arrives in time to see her confessing. Mirai remembers the day he said goodbye to his family for the last time seconds before the car exploded. He cries as his aunt explains that they adopted him to secure the right to inherit. He says that his life would be much better if they both disappeared, and upon hearing this, his aunt, under the effect of the arrow, self-destructs. He despairs because he didn't know she would obey and runs to call an ambulance, but she had already been shot and an angel appears to pick her up. Desperate, Mirai remembers his mother saying that people live to be happy, causing him to have the desire to live again to achieve that happiness for his family. Nasa then says that she was there to make this a reality as his private angel. 13 angels chose one person to be their private angel, and after 999 days one of the 13 humans will be chosen to become the new god, and he or she will be able to get everything they want, while their angel will live in peace by their side. She explains this to Mirai, but he shows no interest in becoming a god. She explains that if he is not chosen he will lose the powers granted by her, but he says he wants to have an ordinary happiness, because his mother believed that everyone deserves to be happy. He even wishes he could only use the arrow one more time to make his uncle confess to the police. He turns on the TV and sees a news report about a certain Rodriguez, who had relationships with 5 women, and is startled to see that he was being accompanied by an angel, deducing that he had used the arrows on them. Nasa explains that it makes sense as red arrows can be used on up to 14 people at once. Mirai feels sorry for the women and asks if there was any way to avoid the arrows. She explains that the only way is to run away with the wings, which are faster than the arrows, but for someone without wings it was impossible, even though the arrows end their effect after 33 days and cannot be used again on the same person. Meanwhile, Rodriguez was having fun with the women until suddenly a guy appears and hits him with a white arrow that eliminates him instantly, causing the women to get rid of the charm and run for their lives. The next day, on her way out of the school, Mirai sees the news that Rodriguez has been eliminated for a mysterious cause, while the angel responsible for him delivered his soul to heaven. After delivering his uncle to the police, Nasa celebrates that he was now closer to the happiness he desired. But he wasn't excited because he was worried about Rodriguez's mysterious elimination. Suddenly a news story begins to play. A robbery was taking place and the bandit had already had 2 hostages eliminated. At this moment Metropolitan, the guy who eliminated Rodriguez, appears and says he is there in the name of justice. After convincing the policeman with the red arrows, he stops the robbery, freeing all the hostages and being seen as a hero. In the interview with the reporters he says that he was there for the peace of the people, and to do this, he will eliminate all the enemies sent from the sky, saying that he has already killed one of them, making Mirai understand that it was he who eliminated Rodriguez and intended to eliminate the other 11. He hurries up and asks Nasa to get away from him, after all this would give away that he is one of them. At home, he asks Nasa to remove him as a candidate, since he had no interest in either the powers or being a god, but she explains that by accepting the wings and arrows as a hope to live, denying them would be like denying his life, and with that he would die. All those who were chosen as candidates had lost the hope of living, being people dissatisfied with society and with the desire to change it. Nasa also explains that there are special class angels like her who grant white and red wings and arrows, while class 1 grants red wings and arrows and class 2 only the wing or only the red arrow, although they can evolve or regress from one class to another depending on their actions. Mirai reflects on what he can do to stay away from Metropolitan, and Nasa suggests that he not leave the house, but he decides to go to the school ceremony since he will never be happy if he stays locked up at home, explaining that all he had to do was go alone and no one would find out that he was one of the candidates. Already ready to go to school, Nasa says that he can call her for anything, and advises Mirai to use the red arrow on Saki, his childhood friend whom he likes, the reason he chose to study at that school. She tells him that he can use the 33 days duration of the arrow to make her fall in love, but he says he doesn't want to use the arrows for that reason. So Mirai goes to the school happy for the new beginning in his life, but he spots an angel named Revel. He thinks that everything will be fine if he acts normal, but Revel pops up in front of him. Mirai is afraid that it's Metropolitan's angel, but to his surprise that was the angel of Saki, the girl he likes, who hits him with a red arrow. She asks him to go to her house to wait for her. He goes there immediately, happy to be in his beloved's room. Some time later she arrives explaining that they were in the same high school class, making him even happier. She then asks what class his angel was in, finding out it was the special class, making Revel worry, but he reassures them by saying it wasn't Metropolitan. Revel then asks Mirai to be Saki's wings as a way to protect her, because she only had the red arrow since he was a second-class angel. The two intertwine their halos for safety and test flight together, leaving Mirai overjoyed to be flying with Saki after so many years of not seeing each other properly. After the flight, Revel explains that he believes that the one chosen to be God should be judged by their conduct and believes that Metropolitan was not suitable. He tries to get Mirai to confront Metropolitan, and because of the effect of the arrow he agrees to go, but Nasa shows up in time. She explains that if Mirai was shot, since he was bewitched by Saki, his wings and white arrows would pass to her, and if he took out Metropolitan he could also pass them both to her, so Revel knew that Saki would benefit anyway. But Saki says she doesn't want this and asks Mirai not to go. Revel says that he thinks it would be better if they teamed up anyway, but he was worried about what Mirai would do when he came out of the spell. But Nasa explains that Mirai wouldn't hurt her because he really loved her, leaving him speechless. So they partner up, deciding that they would live in Saki's room until the god is chosen. The next day Metropolitan continues to play the hero but was irritated that he had not yet found another candidate. 33 days later, the effect of the arrow on Mirai is over and the two of them receive a notification. Metropolitan will make an important presentation that will be broadcast live. At the time of the broadcast, Metropolitan says that he has changed his mind and considered the other candidates to be partners, and sets up a meeting time at the stadium to discuss the partnership, clearly a trap. Even knowing this, on the appointed day, Mirai and Saki go to the stadium to mingle with the crowd that had gone to watch what would happen. Mirai notices that many angels have come, deducing that there were other candidates there, and Saki reminds him that they shouldn't face things that only they could see. Meanwhile, their angels were watching the live broadcast. When Metropolitan appears, the audience applauds the hero, and two others just like him wearing costumes appear, both with red wings and arrows. They try to hit Metropolitan with an arrow, but Metropolitan doesn't work because he was already under the effect of some arrow. They realize that it was actually someone else under the costume being controlled by Metropolitan, and ask for the real one to appear. We learn about the past of the two candidates. They failed to pass the entrance exam, and feeling that their lives were over, they agree to be shot together. But before they do, the angels appear, making them cry emotionally, promising that if they become God, they will make the other one happy. In the present, they say that they knew Metropolitan was around, since to reach them he would have to be nearby. At this moment, he appears on a screen saying that it really was what he planned, but as they were in two it would be difficult, explaining that he would not appear. Then the two decide to leave, but at this moment a child appears flying and begs to go with them, because she was afraid of Metropolitan. She explains that she suffered bullying at school, but since she got wings she stopped wanting to be eliminated. However, she had no arrows to protect herself. They are confused because it could be a trap, but feeling sorry for the girl they decide that they will take her in on the condition that they shoot a red arrow at her. However, Metropolitan appears first, hitting the girl and then leaving. Then the two ask if anyone else from there wants to ally themselves with them, imagining that more candidates have come who want to stop Metropolitan. In fact, others wearing uniforms show up and agree to the deal, but they explain that they don't have wings. The two accept the offer and shoot them with red arrows, closing the deal. Mirai thinks that if he and Saki unite it would already be 6 against Metropolitan, but at this point Metropolitan appears again on the broadcast, revealing that he was not the real one. Behind them, Metropolitan hits one of them with a white arrow and the other with a red arrow. He explains that when they and the audience were distracted by the arrival of the others, he switched places with his imposter, and that in fact the two were just humans controlled through another form, the money. At this moment the angel of the one who was shot appears and, as was the rule, hands the arrows and wings to Metropolitan. Everyone is confused about what was going on. Metropolitan handcuffs the two who were being controlled and starts testing the red arrow's obedience, asking if they would take someone out if he asked. In fact, this goes beyond power, as their will to live speaks louder and they try to escape, but Metropolitan eliminates the guy with an arrow. On the girl's turn, she goes into despair and Mirai thinks if there was a way to save her, but he would be eliminated with the slightest carelessness. At that moment the girl's angel appears and starts begging for someone to save her. Saki starts not to be able to stand the scene of cruelty. At this point Nasa appears and without looking at anyone tells him not to move, but someone sees him and Saki looking at the sky and films them. Nasa introduces herself to Metropolitan and says that no one else will show up, so he replies that the girl was useless and eliminates her, causing the audience to panic. Nasa reminds Mirai to take advantage of the audience to leave. When everyone leaves, Metropolitan takes more wings and arrows from the other eliminated candidates and leaves. At Saki's house the two regret that they couldn't do anything to help anyone, and Mirai says that Metropolitan would have to be eliminated, but he couldn't think of putting anyone down, remembering that his father says that people can never even hold a grudge against someone because then people would be happier. At that moment another candidate named Mukaido appears, asking to be their ally and allowing himself to be shot by the arrow. However, Nasa says that the man was being sincere. Revel explains that it was not a good option to hit him because if he is hit, although he can't lie, he will also change the facts due to the effects of the arrow. Mukaido explains that he gave up on life when he found out he had cancer that would finish him off in a few months, and when an angel appeared he got his hopes up again. However, since he could die before the god was chosen, he hit a rich guy with an arrow, getting money for his daughter and pregnant wife, giving up on being a god, because by becoming a thief he stopped being worthy. But Saki and Nasa deny this because he used his powers for the good of his family. He disagrees and says that he will use his short time to make his children happy by preventing Metropolitan from becoming a god, and to get to know as many of the other candidates as possible to know which one was the most suitable for him to help. To do this, he shot detectives and psychologists until he reached the arrow limit and sent them into the stadium to find out who would respond to the angels. He explains that when he saw the video of the two, he realized they were good people and asks if they wish to become gods. They both deny it, but Mirai says that to accept the partnership with him he would have one condition: that he would not give up his treatment for the sake of his family. He is thrilled and accepts the condition since he really wanted to live as long as possible. Mukaido explains that his angel is Barrett, the angel of knowledge. Revel explains that he has learned everything about the celestial world and by displaying his knowledge has dropped from special to first class. They also deduce that Metropolitan's angel was Maze, the angel of greed who mysteriously went from no class straight to special. Mukaido also claims to be a clothing designer and shows them designs for uniforms to hide their identities. The next day we discover Metropolitan's true identity: a student who is the grandson of the school principal. He talks to his friend Minamikawa asking what he would wish for if he could have one wish come true. His friend says money, but he asks that it be something that affects society. Then Minamikawa replies that he would wish for all the ugly girls to disappear. Metropolitan says that he wishes for something impossible: that his dead sister would come back to life. Realizing that they were alone, Metropolitan decides to test the range limit of the arrows, noticing that by combining them it was possible to double or even triple the range. Later, he goes to his sister and wishes her a happy birthday. Meanwhile, the trio gathers to discuss. Mukaido explains that of the 5 candidates that remained unknown, he managed to discover a boy in the stadium but lost sight of him when he flew away. Also, they should keep an eye out for people who have gained fame or money abnormally. At that moment something abnormal appears on the news. A girl named Yamada attacked schoolgirls and was caught, but soon after she ran away with the permission of the guards. The angels explain that it is possible that Metropolitan has granted her the angel tools. Meanwhile, we see Yamada having fun with her next victim when Metropolitan appears asking her to be more attentive and eliminate uglier girls as he had requested. At the same time the group deduces that Metropolitan has acquired 3 wings and 3 red arrows from other candidates. Revel explains that it was possible to grant the angel tools to a non-candidate after being hit with the red arrow, and once the 33 days of the arrow's duration has passed the tools would return to him. In other words, until the 33 days passed Yamada would be an out-of-control hunter. And not only was Metropolitan fulfilling his friend's dream of eliminating ugly girls, but it was a good way to attract any candidate who tried to stop Yamada. Mukaido thinks the best way was to eliminate Yamada and Metropolitan, but Mirai, the one with the white arrow, says he doesn't want to use it. Revel says that the red arrow might even work, but he didn't think it was worth the risk. Mirai says he understands, but he believed that between eliminating or being eliminated, it was better to be eliminated. Mukaido then asks which arrow he would use on Metropolitan if it were Saki's life at stake. Mirai imagines the scene and goes crazy with doubt, taking so long that she is shot by Metropolitan before he could do anything. With the shock of his imagination, everyone worries about Mirai and Mukaido decides to close the meeting. The next day Mukaido is with his family when he sees the news of another girl eliminated. He goes to Saki's house and we finally meet his angel Barrett. Mukaido shows that he got weapons for them since Mirai didn't want to use the white arrow, and Barrett explains that he had no rules against using human creations to eliminate other candidates. However, Mirai and Saki deny using any weapons, but Mukaido explains that he doesn't mind going bad if it's to protect his family. Since Metropolitan had not yet succeeded in attracting any candidates, he thinks of doing something more eye-catching. The group is discussing the plan when suddenly a new piece of news comes up. Yamada has eliminated another girl at the top of the Geisha Tower, the perfect place for a fight, and was flying around drawing everyone's attention. Muraiko says that since he can't use arrows because he has already reached the limit amount, he will serve as bait confronting Yamada. So when Metropolitan appears, Mirai will hit him with a red arrow and show him the costumes he made for them to use. Then the two leave for the mission. Once there, Mukaido confronts Yamada while Mirai waited in hiding as agreed. However, they didn't count on Yamada being ordered to approach any candidate who shows up, so the tower can be blown up. After the explosion, Mirai goes into despair and runs to get Mukaido. Luckily he survived the explosion due to the strength of his clothing. explaining that he imagined something like this could happen. But the fight was about to begin because at that moment Metropolitan appears behind them. Mukaido then asks Nasa if she was sure that Meizo was special class like her, asking her to cover his back while Barrett covers Mirai, so that Metropolitan would think that he was the one with the white arrow, and he would give Mirai an opening to hit his red arrow. The plan works and Metropolitan targets Mukaido, but he explains that he has placed another bomb in a building full of civilians and will blow it up if they don't surrender. Even though it might be a bluff, Mukaido was not willing to risk it and says that only he had to be sacrificed, speaking softly for Mirai to hit Metropolitan when he fires his arrow. But instead Mirai hits his arrow on Metropolitan's arrow, saving Mukaido's life. Then Mirai, realizing that he could use his arrow to destroy others, begins trying to hit Metropolitan without shooting, using his arrow as a shield. Mukaido tries to take advantage of this to fire his shots at Metropolitan. Even though he is wearing a bulletproof vest, his suit is damaged, partially showing his face, making Mirai hesitate to hit him and thereby manage to escape. At Saki's house, Mirai regrets having hesitated, explaining that during his life, no matter how much he suffered from his colleagues and uncles, he could never strike back. The next day Metropolitan shows up at school saying he hurt his head a little, causing his friend Minamikawa to connect the news of the ugly girl Slayer with the previous day's fight, making him understand that his friend was Metropolitan. In fear, he comes to the conclusion that the safest thing was to act normally. Meanwhile, Mirai tries to describe what little he has seen of Metropolitan's face to the group, but Saki asks for the meeting to continue another day. At night, she comes to Mirai and asks him to lie down with her so they can talk. The angels find her request strange, especially because she asks them to leave to give them both some privacy. After they leave, Mirai is confused about what she wanted and she reminds him of a family trip they took when they were children. Mirai found a 4-leaf clover and Saki was sad that he couldn't find any, but Mirai gives him his, explaining that it must bring her happiness because besides being a 4-leaf clover, it had a yellow ladybug sitting on it, the color of happiness. Then Saki swears that they would be friends forever and the clover would be the symbol of friendship. However, after Mirai was left alone the moment he needed it most, she not only abandoned him but also went along with the teasing his classmates did, mistreating him. She explains that she has always regretted the way she acted, but when she went to him to apologize and return the clover, she saw him destroying himself. Overcome with guilt, she also tries to self-destruct, at which point she is saved by Revel. She tells him that when she found out he was alive, she felt an enormous relief, but still feeling guilty, she asks to be eliminated at his hands. As she begs him a few times to eliminate her, he takes off with her, taking flight, leaving the angels confused. After flying high up, Mirai releases his halo, leaving Saki trapped with only her halo. Revel tries to intervene but she stops him, understanding that Mirai was leaving her life in her hands. Then Saki lets go and Revel despairs, but Nasa remains calm. However, Saki regrets it and grabs Mirai's hand again, saying that she wanted to stay alive. She then begs him for forgiveness, but Mirai says that he wasn't hurt by her and that they can seek happiness together like they sought Clover as children, and they fly off hugging. The angels talk and Revel asks how Nasa knew that Saki didn't want to die, but she replies that she only knew that Mirai wouldn't let her fall. Meanwhile, Mukaido arrives home and his wife asks where he always went, remembering that they agreed never to have a secret between them. He explains that he loved his family and was fighting evil to protect them. The next day Mukaido says that he has gathered the information he has gotten from Metropolitan so far, including the DNA collected the day they faced each other, and was making a uniform for Saki, asking what color she would like, and she replies yellow, the color Mirai said represented happiness. Saki also says that she thinks it would be better for them to meet in a larger and more suitable location, showing a church that was always empty, and says that she wants to acquire wings to be useful. Barrett explains that the only ways to get wings was either to eliminate a god candidate, or for some candidate hit by her red arrow to be eliminated, and Saki says that she didn't want that. Then Revel reminds her that he could evolve from the second stage to the first stage so that way she could get the wings, thinking that she could acquire the knowledge that Barrett had. Barrett says it could work, getting Revel all excited. Meanwhile, Metropolitan reflected that if Mukaido used the weapon it was because he didn't have a white arrow, understanding that Mirai was the one who did, and that he didn't want to use it. The next day another candidate named Hajime ends up finding a policeman used by Mukaido. The group gathers at the church, the new meeting place. Saki sees Revel trying to learn all the scriptures of the kingdom of heaven to move up a class to give her wings. Then she tries on her costume that had been completed. She looks super cute, with ears and little tails that serve to give her special vision and disperse heat produced from the clothing that gave her more strength. Suddenly they see a red arrow approaching. Everyone is worried, but it was Mukaido's arrow that returned, indicating that the policeman had been eliminated. He quickly goes with Mirai to his house, afraid that they have discovered his identity. When they arrive they see Hajime. Mukaido looks for his family while Mirai tries to hit Hajime with his arrow, but he escapes. Far away, in an amusement park, he is amused that his plan to capture Mukaido's family in a magic mirror box has worked. We get to know Hajime's story. He has been considered a freak all his life because of his appearance, leading him to wish he could give it all up. However, after being saved by Balto, the angel of intuition, he strikes the girl he liked with an arrow to get her. but seeing Metropolitan on TV he finds him amazing and wishes to be lovable in that way. So he uses the arrow to get several facelifts becoming as we know him in the present. However, seeing that Metropolitan was fighting other candidates he decides that he will be his ally. Feeling that he still had a way to become more beautiful he goes back to the plastic surgery to ask the doctor about his appearance using his arrow. With the effect of it the doctor ends up talking more than she should, mentioning a strange case of a guy who asked her to preserve his sister's appearance. Upon commenting to his intuitive angel, he suggests that he test the DNA that the doctor possessed with the DNA collected from Metropolitan that he got from the policeman. And so he discovers Metropolitan's identity and promises that he will be helpful and capture one of the candidates. In the present he warns Metropolitan that the plan was already in motion, but explains that he only had one arrow available. Metropolitan gets angry and asks him to shoot only one god candidate. He then calls Mukaido to give him the location of where his family was, and immediately he and Mirai fly off to the rescue, leaving Saki behind since she doesn't have wings. Once they arrive Mukaido walks right into the trap, surprising Hajime by not understanding the power of love. At that moment Mirai points a white arrow at him leaving even Nasa surprised. He shoots but it was only a way to make Hajime leave. Hajime leaves telling Metropolitan that one of them had already been captured, while Mukaido tries in vain to get out of the prison. Hajime returns a while later with Metropolitan. He threatens Mukaido by saying that Mirai might try to save himself if he leaves his friend behind, but Mirai decides to enter the magic mirror. He quickly asks Mukaido to carry his wife and start flying, while he prepared to do the same by carrying his daughter. The two of them start flying extremely fast, disappearing from Metropolitan's sight, making it impossible for him to hit his arrow. Then he asks Hajime to keep an eye on them because they will get tired of flying and leaves, as he didn't want to take the risk of trusting another candidate. A long time later Mirai decides to pretend that they have found a way to escape by keeping quiet, leaving Hajime confused because even the angels of the two disappear entering the plan. But it would do no good if in fact they couldn't get out, as they were starting to get tired from all the flying. Meanwhile Revel couldn't take any more information in his head, and as much as he wanted to help Saki, he goes to her to let her know that he couldn't and cries for not being able to do it enough. Realizing that he had cried he thinks that he will be disqualified as an angel because angels didn't cry. However, the current god says that he was the first angel to cry for a human, showing that he developed empathy for humans, and with that, he evolves to the first class, becoming the angel of emotions. And so finally Saki gets her wings that she has longed for. She quickly arrives at the park and hits Hajime with an arrow, causing him to fall in love. He is torn between following Saki or his idol Metropolitan, but Saki throws all her charm on Hajime's needy and unloved heart. He gives Metropolitan a lame excuse to leave his position and talks to Saki. She gently asks him to release everyone by explaining that they were people dear to her, causing him to immediately start trying to break the mirror. Metropolitan is confused by what was happening, and Hajime says that he met a girl who showed him the meaning of life, making Metropolitan angry when he realizes that he had been hit. Metropolitan quickly arrives on the scene with 3 other people that he has controlled and granted wings to fight. He threatens Saki, but Hajime steps in front protecting her. At that moment, Mirai and Mukaido notice an opening in the ceiling made by Hajime and manage to aim there to free themselves. Unleashed, they prepare for a 4-on-4 battle. Mukaido asks to get his family safe first, and Metropolitan agrees to let Saki take them both. After dropping them off at the church after quickly explaining to his wife that Mukaido was fighting for his family's future, she returns to the park. To prevent them from being hit by arrows and changing sides, they shoot red arrows at each other for safety. And so the battle begins with Hajime fighting to protect Saki, facing one of Metropolitan's controlled ones that shoots at him several times. However, his wings were very fast and he was able to dodge the shots easily. Then with Mirai and Saki's help, Hajime cuts off his arm, taking him out of the battle. Soon Metropolitan, who had already understood that the trio were good people, begins his plan B. Fuyuko, another controlled by him, appears with a mega virus that spread rapidly through the air, giving a demonstration of the damage it did with a small mouse, explaining that it had enough quantity for an entire city and they would choose whether to let it hit each one of them or have it wipe out thousands of innocents. To make matters worse, she explains that in addition to the release button, she also had a chip in her heart that would be triggered if she was eliminated, leaving them with no way to face her. Having no other choice, they agree to surrender, Mirai being the first because he was the only one in the group with white arrows. He walks towards his end only to be hit by the virus, and everyone is left in a panic, not knowing how to help. But when it's time for her to insert the virus into him, Mirai holds his arm, stopping her. Then she presses the button, releasing the virus into the air, but Mirai hits it with a white arrow, eliminating the virus. Mukaido, who had hit Mirai with his red arrow, asks him to put an end to it, because surely there must have been more viruses hidden there. Mirai wonders if he could eliminate someone to save thousands of other lives, but is confused, remembering what his family taught him. As Mukaido struggles, he becomes weak from the cancer and reaches for a gun, but he no longer has the strength to pull the trigger. So Metropolitan aims at Mirai with a white arrow. At this moment, Fuyuko also sends all the virus needles towards him, leaving him without any escape route with the virus and the arrow heading towards him. Saki steps in to protect him, and to protect her Hajime takes his sword and manages to cut the virus strands, but one of them is not cut in time and hits his arm. At the same time he begins to melt away and is tragically eliminated, though happy to have met and saved Saki. She is super sad about this and gets his wings and arrows. Even though his human has been eliminated, Balta is happy, as he has been shot down, happy and in a way finding love. Metropoliman then says that he should thank Mirai because if he had eliminated Fuyuko she would not have launched her needles. Weakly, Mukaido says that the only one responsible was Metropoliman. Metropoliman then launches an arrow at him who was powerless to react, but Mirai saves him and tells him to take him to a hospital. He denies this, saying that he would only leave after seeing Metropoliman eliminated. After leaving Mukaido with Saki and the last one controlled by Metropoliman running away desperate for his life, Mirai confronts Metropoliman. He tells him that Metropoliman was worse than a cockroach and says that he will hit him with a red arrow and send him to prison, because he believes that eliminating someone would get in the way of his happiness and he doesn't want his happiness to be in the way of someone less than a cockroach. So the two promise to fight until one of them hits the other with one of the arrows. Your support means everything to me. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel for more content like this.